Hello, thank you, and welcome to Critter Crusades, the show about ordinary people on extraordinary missions to help animals. Today I have amazing guests. We're talking today about the incident that we all know as Katrina, the devastation that it took toll on the city of New Orleans and the surrounding areas. But the animals were the creatures that were really left behind. Today I'm joined by two wonderful guests. I have Kim Finger, who has wonderfully started a great organization, Rescue for Ruffugees. And also I have Brandy Ferdig, and you work with the Animal General Hospital. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to start with you, Brandy, because you were one of those great crusaders that went out actually to New Orleans and spent your time, your effort, your money to be there and to do the rescue. And as a result of seeing the images, Kim, you became involved and as a normal everyday citizen went out there and said, I've got to do something about this. So Brandy, what was it like there?
Unbelievable. There's not even words to describe the mess.
So your organization, what does Animal General Hospital do?
We're an organization that provides help paying for vet care, free vet care for wildlife, for rehabbers, for a dog that was hit by a car that isn't even yours and you care enough to get it fixed up.
And so how does that work? Were you there as a medical person, or what was your position?
No, I wasn't there as a medical person. I'm just a volunteer that does a lot of work for Animal General Hospital, and heard about it, and we all decided to go.
So, did you get a call? Somebody say you want to go with this, or did you say something inside I'm driven to go? What happened?
I don't watch a lot of news or anything, so I choose not to see what's going on. And then I got a phone call from Jennifer Conrad. She runs the organization. She's like, hey, you want to go to New Orleans and go save animals? I'm like, yeah, let's go. So we went out the next day.
So is this a normal thing you do, is when somebody calls you to help animals, you have no doubt and you just say, I'm going?
I just go.
What drives you to do that?
You know what? It just thinking about any kind of animal and any kind of distress makes me crazy, and I can't just not do anything.
How long have you been doing this?
Forever. Forever, my whole life. I have a real job, and so I have to do that to pay the bills, but the rest of my time is spent dealing with animals, and my job is wonderful. I'm like, I gotta go, and they're like, okay, just come back.
That's great. And Kim, your organization was started because you were seeing the pictures, correct?
Yes. Yes. What
happened? How did your organization start, and what is Rescue for Ruffugees exactly?
Well, basically, like Brandy, I have a real job that pays the bills, and I couldn't up and go, but I knew from seeing the news what was happening, and like Brandy, I'm a rescuer. I've been doing animal rescue for 6 years, and I just was panic-stricken by what was happening and wanted to help in any way I could. And to make a very long story short, I had the opportunity to work with T. Boone Pickens and get a flight out of New Orleans with 113 animals on that flight. And prior to being able to coordinate the flight, I had to know where the animals would go once they arrived. So I sent out emails to all of my rescuers in Los Angeles, San Diego, all the way up to almost San Francisco. Within 24 hours, I had 21 rescue groups on board to take these animals, no-kill rescue groups. So it was fantastic. And then that number grew to 30, and we brought in ultimately 260 animals.
So we're sitting in the city of Los Angeles, where tens of thousands of animals are in our shelter system that lose their lives. What do you think caused people in Los Angeles to open their hearts to take more on? I know there was some sort of concern about that with many people. What do each of you think caused people to do that?
I don't know. I think it's just everybody wants to help, and they didn't know of a way. They couldn't go down there. They really wanted to do something. They don't have a lot of money. They couldn't send money. I'll foster a dog, or I'll take in a pet, or whatever anyone could do.
And with me, I worked very closely with the rescue groups, and what they said was, this is an emergency. We need to step up. And yes, you're right, we do have a lot of animals in our shelters that need to be adopted and pulled by rescues, and they were continuing to do that, but they made extra room and space and found extra funds and went out to their donors to get more money to be able to take in the Katrina animals. And we've all kind of debriefed afterwards and said that, God, we hope if we have an earthquake here that likewise rescue groups outside of Los Angeles, outside of California, would be willing to help us in that scenario.
Well, the next thing I want to talk about is actually what it was like for you, Brandy, there. I know that we have some tape now that we can roll that is showing more of what it was really like, the devastation that you saw. Now, was this from your first trip there or your second trip?
I think the first footage here, this is from the first trip that I took, and I just the things that I saw, I had to go back. I had to go back home to LA for Hurricane Rita because I'm from California and I don't know what to do in a hurricane, so I went home and then I came back after Rita hit.
It looks as though people were coaxing animals. They were having to just seek every small crevice and corner to see if there was an animal there, and then by hook or crook, they had to pull them out and make friends with them, try to find out, you know, what was going to entice this animal to come to them.
Vienna sausages.
Oh, that works.
Worked like a charm.
That's a great advertisement.
Went through cases of them.
Well, what about, I hear so much about dogs. I have to assume that there were cats, that were a lot of massive rescue of cats as well. I know I've seen some of the groups and interviewed some of the groups that were doing cat rescue. Was it more difficult to handle the dogs or the cats?
Cats.
Yes.
Definitely cats, because, you know, cats are going to climb a tree and cats are going to get in a little attic space. These dogs, they all went under the houses. The thing about New Orleans is everything's built like 2 feet off the ground. So you can see here one of our volunteers going under a house. There was like 3 dogs under this house.
So they have a natural instinct to go there.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
The people that went with you to rescue, were they trained rescuers to
No.
know how to do this type of work?
No, not really. We're not really trained. We're not official. We had a desire to go help, and we learned as we went.
And so houses were found that were in complete destruction. Everything was turned upside down. And how would you find animals? How would you know a house had an animal or not in it?
Listen, look around, see if there's a dog house in the backyard, or this house right here where I found these birds, it said no animals inside. I went inside and the roof had caved in and I heard birds, and I thought maybe it was pigeons because the roof had caved in. Well, I opened a bedroom door and there were 3 cockatiels in cages, but it said no animals inside. So it was just a fluke.
And I know your experience, Kim, of dealing with many of the rescue groups and everything. Did many of them go to Katrina as well and help out in such a way like this?
Some did, but most of the groups that I worked with actually stayed local, and they were just here to receive once the animals arrived and then medically care for them and rehab them.
I know we saw many pictures of destruction. The pictures were just unbelievable, and we see people on boats, people trying to get out. But after all of that was said and done and it was drier and everything, it was really that the animals were left and the people trying to hunt them down. Now, what's happening now is there's still animals left, correct?
Lots.
How many would you say?
Thousands. There was an estimated 300,000 animals in the city, and like 15,000 were rescued.
And I understand also that the city also had an enormous problem with this before the hurricane, that actually New Orleans had an incredibly difficult problem with overpopulation, feral animals. So this is really causing a problem. Is it that the animals you're getting in now are feral? Are they tame enough to be housed? What has happened with that?
Those that we received, there were several that we've deemed now to be feral cats, meaning they had never had human contact, and we actually did have some feral dogs as well who were street roamers. Sadly, we lost one to distemper recently, and that was purely because that dog had never been vaccinated.
Mm-hmm. And what do you do with a feral cat or a feral dog in that kind of situation?
That's actually my expertise area. I rehab and tame feral animals. That's one of the things I enjoy doing. So with cats, it's much easier to do when they're kittens. With adult cats, you sometimes have to realize that they aren't going to be tameable, and find an appropriate place for them to live, either in a home where somebody's okay with not having a cat they can pet, which I have, or they live outdoors, which, you know, we try and avoid that, but sometimes that's the environment they've grown up in and that's where they're safest. With dogs, it's a long process, I should say, but it's extremely rewarding when you take a dog that's fearful, it's never been in contact with a human, doesn't know how to engage, and you're able to tame it through love and time and affection and make it a house pet. And I've done that several times over now.
Right. So in your first trip, you saw horrendous things. What made you go back a second time?
the horrendous things I saw, and just knowing that every minute I'm not going from door to door, there's an animal behind that door that could die because there's no one there canvassing that neighborhood. I mean, there was a lot of rescuers out there, and everybody was spread apart canvassing the city, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. Needed more people. So I had to go back.
So how many people were in your group or in your party of people that went?
The first time there was just 4 of us. The second time it was just me and my brother-in-law. I was trying to recruit people, and we just jumped in the van and went.
And how did you live every night and every day with the shortage of food and water that they had in general?
That wasn't too big of a problem. They had at Lamar-Dixon, where was the makeshift big shelter, FEMA had set up big, like 1,000-man tent that was air conditioned, had cots in it. So we all just lived in there, and they supplied food. They had food tents, and in that way FEMA really stepped up. They had all the water we could want, all the food, and they even had like hot meals brought in. So we were fine, but the animals weren't.
Did they allow you to go do your searches easily, or were there restrictions?
The first time there was restrictions, but the second time after they had gotten everything ironed out, we actually got a credential from the mayor saying we were allowed to break into any house we felt that there would be an animal in.
Do you feel that it was a little too late?
It was a little too late. About 3 weeks too late.
So in that, when you went back the second time, were they finding just more carcasses than they were animals?
Absolutely. The first time I was there, it was a lot of live animals, but there was nobody in the city because they were saying you can't go in, you can't go in. I drove right up. The military said, can we help you? I said, yeah, I'm here to rescue animals. Oh, go on in. I didn't have any magnets on my car, nothing. They just said, oh, go on in.
Did you worry for your own safety, for your own health concerns? I know that the contaminated waters, all of the different things. And what were you going to do if just you and your brother-in-law, with the animals once you got them? Yeah, Did you have enough supplies? Did you?
Well, I wasn't concerned about my safety. You don't even think about it. I just went in and did it and got cut up and bruised up and was wearing shorts and no masks, or I don't care. You just got to go. You don't have time to think about that kind of stuff. We would get animals and put them in the van, and then we're like, okay, the van's full. Now what? Now what do we do? And people like Kim, who were receiving all these animals, and thank God for that, because we would take them back to Lamar-Dixon. Lamar-Dixon had 1,000 animals in it or whatever, and they're like, okay, we can't take any more. So we had people with hotel rooms. So we'd take them to hotel rooms. I rescued betta fish and iguanas and tarantulas, and we just take them to hotel rooms.
So Kim, at what point did you get involved? At what week? What week did you get involved at the whole Katrina incident? Because it had happened, let's say, on a Sunday, and by what time were you already organized? How long did it take you?
September 13th was the day it all started. That was the day that my friend who works at Helen Woodward said to me, we're getting a plane in San Diego. If you want a few dogs, and Much Love Animal Rescue was the group I was working with, if you guys want to get a few animals, we'll ship them up to you in a van. And that was when my brain, the little aha light went on, and I said, gee, we're in LA. We should be able to get our own plane, more than one plane. And so that was when it all went into high gear. Sadly, though, just as Brandy said, there were struggles with just getting that plane. There were so many animals at Lamar-Dixon and everywhere else, and it took us 5 days to get the plane. We were ready. We were waiting. We were on 24-hour notice, and the problems we were having were what we understand happened. FEMA had confiscated trucks, so we had no vehicles to get them from Lamar-Dixon and other places to the airport. They needed rabies vaccinations. I had vets from here who were willing to fly there at a moment's notice. Come to find out, they wouldn't let them give them the rabies vaccination because they weren't Louisiana vets. So there were barriers put up along our path, which ultimately was successful, but we might have been able to get more planes and do more had we been able to put things into gear quicker.
Now, I know there was a rescue. We have tape on of you going into a house that you had found some cats. And what happened in that?
Well, actually, the owners of the cats had called in to the big organization that was organizing everything and said that they had left their cat. So we get the address. There's one cat here, so we're told. We walk up. I see the cat in the window. So we go in, and this is the house. The water had gone up to the ceiling, swished everything around, and the cat was just sitting in the window looking outside. So we grabbed that cat. After grabbing that cat, meow, there was another one. Like, oh, great. So we catch it, and they're, you know, slippery, slidey in the mud and mold growing on them, and just horrendous stuff. But we got them both. We got them outside, and they were really skinny. We took them to the little triage center and got fluids in them, and they were fine. And I actually got a phone call from the owners saying, "You rescued my cats, thank you." And like 3 weeks later, they had called, and they had tracked down that it was me that went in the house and called to thank me.
Well, and I know that's where you came into play with what Rescue for Refugees did, along with New Leash on Life, putting together a Super Katrina Adoption Day. And when you talked about Reunited with Owners, I know I have your book, and it was, you know, showing pictures of all the different animals that you had at that adoption day, and it was in the Santa Monica hangar. And when I was there, I was so amazed to see how many animals were there. And my favorite part, and I keep going back to this, is when I see signs like Reunited with Owner. I mean, you see these animals, and some of them look the same. I saw another picture in here where one of the cats, it was just a basic gray cat. How did they know that gray cat was their gray cat? You know, you just kind of go, how did this happen? How did they find this? So at that day, you had all these different groups there. How successful was it?
The day was fantastic, and just to say, the booklet was designed and made to send to Louisiana. We sent them to Kinko's and shelters and police stations all throughout New Orleans and the different parishes, so that folks who didn't have computer access could go and search for their animals that way. And I will say, it is a challenge, cats especially, a gray cat, another gray cat. People really knew their animals. They knew quirky things about them. There's one white hair in a certain place, or, you know, one tooth is missing. And it's one of the lessons to be learned is, if you do lose your home, you do need to have descriptive information to share with somebody who may be clear across the country, as we were. So
and I understand the microchipping, there was very little of that. The tags, I understand now, even for those of us in earthquake territory, we need to understand that not only when we have our animals tagged and microchipped, we need to have an alternative number outside of the state, because phone lines can go down. And that's something very important that I think everybody learned from this situation. I know we have a bit of tape of an animal that you had helped in the rescue of. It was a white pit bull. And I know these are the kinds of pictures that drove you into wanting to do this when you see this. And is that the state of all the animals that you found? They were just thin and skinny as this dog?
Yeah, they were really, really skinny, and or it had just been too long.
After how long was this dog starving?
This white pit bull was 30 days. And it was chained up in a closet in a house because the owner didn't want, you know, the floor to get messed up.
Well, I've also heard some rumors that since pit bull fighting is one of the biggest sports that took place in New Orleans, what we are going to see is a dissemination of pit bull fighters and owners spread out all across the country now. They've taken their animals to different places, and that a lot of these animals were left abandoned because the owners didn't want to get caught. And this is a really sad fact, too, that's going to be a very problematic issue, because there's so much discrimination against that breed as well. And I know that there's so many people are actively out there working to help change all of that as well with the animals that come in. And we're just very excited that there are groups like both of yours that have been so involved in this. I want to know now, what is the future for Rescue for Refugees? You've got this continued effort going on. You'll continue to help with the Katrina until it's completed. What is the future, since you were involved in this one disaster?
Well, what I'd like to see the future become, and it's hard to actually say at this point because it really was put together as a result of an emergency, and all the volunteers who came forth, we had over 2,000 folks, of which many of them want to be a part of where we take this next. And that's what we're trying to figure out right now, is where to take it next. I recently started working with the Los Angeles Humane Alliance, which deals with politics and policy. And I'm hoping that with their help and my volunteers, that we can work on developing an evacuation plan. Because as Brandy pointed out a little bit ago, and it struck me, she said, you know, I went back with my brother-in-law because I didn't have anybody else to go back with. If we had some structure, I could have sent emails out to my 2,000 people and got her more recruited volunteers. So what Rescue for Refugees is hoping to do is to be an active agent in helping develop evacuation procedures, protocols, so that when the next emergency happens, we already know who's ready and willing and able to travel to that area to help, to take the animals and rehab them, and have steps so we don't have to develop the process again all over.
I know there are some groups that are that are set up specifically for disaster. They're not adoption groups. They don't do any of that. Your group was set up for more the adoption arena. Will it move now into a different arena as far as having them trained specifically for emergencies to be able to handle that, or?
Well, for example, I know you've recently interviewed Bobby DeRafsher from New Leash on Life. He was one of the groups that I worked with. Bobby's area of expertise is evacuation. I mean, he's fantastic at it. He knows the policy, or the ways rather, to go about doing that. I could see us working together where on my end I'm handling, yes, as you said, the adoption and the rehabbing, working with the rescue groups, figuring out who can take how many of what breed and size and sex. He would be the active agent with his volunteers who would go to whatever devastated area there was and have a plan in place for how to get those animals out, with other groups like Brandy's group and so on.
So what's going to continue to drive you to do these kinds of projects that are so difficult? This is a disaster of such enormous proportion that many people aren't even able to talk about it. I know I was speaking to a news producer that I know, and she was there, and one dog came up and was licking on her face in the middle of the night when she was lying on the street sleeping at night, and she ended up getting that dog shipped. Best friends actually helped her get that dog shipped back to her, but she was in severe post-traumatic shock for the first 30 days, and some people can handle it, some cannot. For people that want to get involved in the future, what is it that people need to know about if they feel that their talents and abilities lend towards either one of your directions to be involved in a disaster? And as I said, we live in Los Angeles. It is obvious and it is known. We will have another major earthquake, and in that we have to be prepared. So what do you suggest people to do?
I can't stress enough, just get prepared. Have kennels in your garage, the little crates, and just be ready and have your animals microchipped. Please.
And what do you suggest as far as how people network and what they should do when a disaster does happen?
Well, and just to play off of what Brandy said, in terms of the kennels, the kennels are used to take the animal with you. As we saw in her videotape,
Yes.
People thought putting their cat in a crate and leaving it in their home was the best solution. You never know how long you're going to be gone for. Do not leave your animal behind, or if you do, give them a chance and let them be free. Do not chain them, do not crate them.
Open a window and just let them go. That was a lot of the death that I saw, was because they would just shut them in the garage or shut them in the bathroom. There were 2 dogs shut in a bathroom with the door shut.
I know one of the things that I have done, I've gone to my 99-cent store. I've prepared my own earthquake kit, which many people, I've found all the different items. I said, why do I have to buy one from someone? I'll make my own. I leave toilet up. There's fresh water in the toilet for animals. I know that sounds strange. A friend of mine had lost her cat in a Manhattan apartment. They'd locked a cat in, her next door neighbor had locked a cat in there, and the cat lived off of the water and the macaroni that it found in the shelf. Being able to have supplies on hand, that animals actually are very smart. They can get into cupboards. They know how to tip things over, break into them. I know it would be a mess, but if you're having a natural disaster, it's going to be a mess anyway. Having that extra water in the house as well. Animals really are survivors, and they do know how to break through and tear through, and just make a commitment and say, you know what, guys, you're going to have your opportunity, because they'll know what's in the closets before we do, because they crawl in there a lot of times. And as far as what people can do that just want to be involved with animals, what are some good suggestions that people can do to get involved to help animals if that's what their passion and their love is?
Start out small. Volunteer maybe at the pound, or find a local shelter, hopefully a non-kill shelter, and do some volunteer work. Start cleaning kennels, walking dogs, and you'll be amazed at the people that you meet that will start leading you off in all these directions, and then it just becomes your life. It really does.
And they don't even have to have animals in their own life. They can do this, and I know a lot of people lately have been asking me, what can their 11-year-old do? I said they can start with an organization and start handling them at the weekend at the adoptions, pet the animal, be there for the animal, walk it around, understand the long-term commitment that you have with the animal. And I know so many of these people did not want to lose their animals. I think one of the biggest things that happened in the New Orleans event was that you saw people, and I'm reading more and more articles, they said, this animal is my family member. It is my source of unconditional love. This is almost or as hard as losing a child or a loved one. And people really know that now. And they know it's not that there's some crazed activist or whatever, that this is just a normal person, a business person that has a family member that they love. And they want to protect them, and they want to, you know, have protection for the animal in case anything happens. And I also think it's important for people to look at what happens in, you know, with their wills, prepare for whatever, you know, life goes on. You prepare for your, you prepare to go out to a vacation, you can prepare for something like that. But on a last note here as we close up, what is anything positive that you found from your connection with this and the Katrina incident? If you can give me like a 30-second summary.
Sure. I think it was the community coming forward, sending out emails, getting responses from all over the country, upwards of over 2,500 emails, then up to 5,000 over a couple of weeks. People donating money, donating time, learning more about animals and their welfare, and becoming more involved. It was unbelievably overwhelming, the positivity of the community effort that it took to bring this all together.
We thank you both so much, and you've just been powerful examples of what someone can do. Thank you again for joining us on Critter Crusades, and know that you can be an ordinary person on an extraordinary mission to help animals. Please get involved and help animals in any organizations that you can. Thank you.
Thanks, Missy.
Yeah, so I think that this is